Howdy, and welcome to the AP Stats 2022 Hybrid Best Practices.
What is up?
We are Bridget Matamoros,
Darren Clift,
Doug Tyson, and I have been for years.
Quick disclaimer, this event's not sponsored by the College Board or the Educational Testing Service. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Hybrid Best Practices 2022 event are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the College Board or the Educational Testing Service. Neither College Board nor ETS is responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information during this event. The primary purpose of this event is to educate and inform.
A little bit about best practices, and hybrid best practices is no exception. We only give the presenters 5 minutes, and after watching them, you'll probably feel inadequate. I know every year after I see these, I feel inadequate.
I feel less incredible.
Yes, and so it makes us feel like lesser teachers because we're not doing all these things. So the challenge is, can you just grab one and make your classroom a better place for students to be, make your experience for your students even better? Even just one is going to help. So a few notes about the decorum. Please be kind to the presenters. As I've been known to say, if you need me to talk for an hour, I can go right now.
All the time.
That's pretty much my whole life.
Seen it.
But if you need me to talk for 5 minutes, you need to give me a month to prepare. It is really hard to get something meaningful into 5 minutes. So I will say that this program does represent what I love the most about the AP Stats community, which is our willingness to share and share really good ideas with each other.
Absolutely.
It's all free.
Mm-hmm.
And so, about our lineup. So, we've got one Acorn presenter. Love having the new guys get involved. Our years at the reading varies from 1 to 12 years. All kinds of experiments. CED units covered are between 1 and 7. And you know what we do every year. You get activities hands-on. You get instructional strategies. You get some teacher hacks, some nice little easy ways to get ideas across. Tons of other good stuff. And as Doug says, if you can only take 1 or 2, man, then it's a win. It's a win. Okay, so we're going to start with our first presenter, which is my good friend. What's his name again?
Bob.
My good friend Bob, and
Lochel.
Bob Lochel. My good friend Bob Lochel. Actually, Bob is the head of Math Coach blog. All kinds of great stuff there. And so we know if Bob got something to say, it's going to be fantastic. You're going to come away with something you can use in class. Appreciate you, Bob. Here we go.
Well, hello, AP Statistics friends. My name is Bob Lochel. I'm a high school math teacher outside of Philadelphia, and today I'm going to share with you a lesson that deals with the topic that for students and teachers alike maybe causes the most confusion and nervousness in the AP Stats curriculum, and that is the idea of power. And every year on the message boards, it's very natural to see even veteran teachers looking for ways to engage their students in the idea of power. And I've tried different things over the years, and some successful, some a little less so. And I sought to do something that not only got the idea of power out there, but helped students experience the idea of power. Because if nothing else, this quote really resonated with me. And it's the idea that we want students to be able to explain what's going on. And whenever we put students in a position where they can explain the mechanisms that are at work, then we're going to be more successful in having students understand the information. And I hope to do that with power. And it all deals with this applet for virtual coins. This is a Desmos graph here. I'm actually going to put it on my screen here. Desmos graph here, and this will be linked to at the end of the presentation so you can get it. And if you're not a Desmos expert, that's okay. My students have mixed levels of success with Desmos. But what we have here is, first of all, we have 3 coins here on the left-hand side. Students can toggle between the 3 virtual coins, coin A, coin B, coin C. And they can also change the number of coins being flipped. It defaults to 10. But we can move this up to maybe 25 coins or even 100 coins. And if you don't use Desmos that often, we can re-randomize with this little guy here too. So this Desmos graph allows students to interact with virtual coins. And we'll be using this to help discover the idea of power today. So again, that'll be linked to at the end of the presentation. And what we want to be able to do is we would like to try to gather evidence as to the fairness of these coins. So our null hypothesis is that the coin might be fair, but the alternate hypothesis here is that the coin is unfair, in that do the coins have something other than a 50-50 chance of landing on heads or tails. So how are students going to interact with this? Well, in my classroom, we use OneNote for our note taking. It's all digital, which makes it easier for me as a teacher to look at student results. So let's see what students here did with coin A. So a student had a sample size of 10, and then the students went to their calculators and did a one prop z-test, a one proportion test, to try to determine if the coin is not fair. Here we had a p-value of 0.2059, so the student correctly concluded that we cannot conclude that the coin is not fair. It's a mouthful, but that's the correct conclusion here. But they also repeated this procedure for sample sizes of 25 and 100. So for each of these three, they ran a test, came up with a p-value, and highlighted the correct conclusion. And in all three cases here, the student failed to reject the null hypothesis in favor of the alternate. And then I asked my students to collaborate and talk to each other, and not only look at their conclusions, but to say which of the sample sizes, which of the evidence was the strongest in helping them make their decision. So there are a couple takeaways here after we talked as a class. First of all, no students concluded that die A was unfair except for one stubborn holdout. And isn't it great when you have those stubborn holdouts who really want to stick to their guns? And students generally agreed that the results when we use a sample size of 100 or flip 100 coins should carry more weight than just flipping 10 coins. That's going to be a key takeaway for later. And just a little spoiler alert here. We're going to find out down the road that coin A really is not fair. And I'll give you that information in a minute. So let's look at coin B. What's happening with coin B? Different student. Sometimes we have to deal with goofy handwriting. But in this case, for sample sizes of 10 and 25, the student failed to reject the null hypothesis. But for the sample size of 100, they did get a very low p-value. And in that case, they concluded the coin was not fair. So mixed results here. As a group, about half the class concluded that coin B was unfair. How about coin C? Coin C, different student here. Sample sizes of 10, 25, and 100. For 25 and 100, clear evidence that the coin is not fair. And in this case, just about all the students concluded that coin C was unfair. So what's going on here? So this only works if we give students a reveal and we tell students about the coins. Well, here's the truth. Coin A is programmed to land on heads 48% of the time. B, 40% of the time. C, 25% of the time. So all three coins are unfair. But the magnitude of their unfairness is different. And then we have the students collect as groups and talk about what factors made it easier or more likely.
Come on, Bob. You know the rules. 5 minutes, kid. 5 minutes. Don't
This
make
many.
me angry.
This many?
That you would correctly identify an unfair coin. And the students were fantastic. Key takeaways. Again, things students said without me having to prompt them too much. Larger sample sizes provide more robust evidence. We should have more trust in bigger sample sizes and use that information to help guide our decision making. And that idea that magnitude matters, the difference between the null and the truth matters in making decisions. If that distance is small, it's going to be very hard to detect differences. If the difference between the null and the truth is big, it's more likely we're going to detect differences. And it all leads to the idea that power is a probability. And there's some factors that can influence that probability that we can control, like sample sizes, and others we cannot. So it was really great. And it was fantastic to get feedback this year from other teachers like Nick. If you see Nick around, he has great ideas on statistics. And it was great to get feedback and people even using the ideas further. So you can find all this on my blog, mathcoachblog.com. You can find the worksheet. You can find the Desmos link. And feel free to leave me any comments there. And I hope that you go off and be powerful with your students.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Up next, we have Leigh and Nataro. She's going to share with us some things with Desmos.
Nice.
Greetings, fellow AP Statistics readers. My name is Leigh Nataro, and I teach at Moravian University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at how you can individualize review with Desmos. First of all, what are the 3 common review headaches that all AP Statistics teachers experience? First, not enough time for review, especially if your school year starts after Labor Day or you have many snow days. Second, students could be absent due to other AP exams, so they're not even in your classroom the 2 or 3 days prior to your exam. And last, we know that students don't all have the same gaps and need the same specific areas to be reviewed. So how can we address that headache? Well, we have the Review Headache Remedy, the StatsMedic AP Exam Review Collection, to help us out. It consists of 7 different review activities, and many are designed to be self-paced. There's individual feedback for students within the activity, and these activities are designed to support students with multiple concepts. So an activity won't focus on just 1 or 2 areas of the AP exam, but multiple areas and integration of concepts. These activities can be done during class, individually with a partner, or they can be assigned outside of class. The recommended time is 20 to 30 minutes per activity, and they're not designed to replace what you currently do for review. They are designed to supplement what you currently do. And these activities were created by myself and fellow AP Statistics reader and friend, Bob Lochel. So what is in the collection? We have Choose the Correct Inference Procedure, which uses the StatsMedic Inference Flowchart. We have What Can You Conclude, which helps students to write conclusions based on answers to probability or inference procedures. We have Know Your Formula Sheet, which helps students to identify what specific part of the formula sheet might be most helpful. We have Common Student Errors with Regression, and this has little videos embedded in it to discuss those common errors. We have Describing and Comparing Distributions, which we'll take a look at in a moment. We have Know Your Calculator, which focuses on using the TI-84 to answer specific questions. And we also have Polygraph Hypotheses Galore. This one does require students to have a partner to play against, but basically the students ask questions to eliminate one of 16 different suspects. So where can you find this awesome collection? You can use the bit.ly that you see on your screen, bit.ly BP 2022 Stats Review, or you can use the QR code. So let's go and take a look at these activities. I'm going to go to teacher.desmos.com, and you can see I've already created an account and I'm already signed in, and I even have the exam collection pinned over here on the side with this little pin symbol. We can see it. So let's take a look at Describing and Comparing Distributions. You can see that I've already assigned this and 3 students have done this particular activity, but maybe you want to decide if this is a good activity for you to give to your students, so you can click on the student preview. Notice that there are teacher moves here that might be helpful to you, describing how you could use this activity with your students. And you could work through this yourself and say, okay, what is this missing? Maybe it's missing a description of shape, right? The fact that it is bimodal. And then on the next screen, notice it tells what the student response was, and then we can see a model solution, and there's a pro tip here as well. Notice that the student might want to go on to the next one, but if they don't actually fill in the response here, it's not going to let them see that model response or that pro tip. So let's say you said, you know what, I want to assign this to my students. How would you do that? Up here you would say assign to your classes or assign to a single session code. And once you've created that code, you can click on View the Dashboard, copy that link to give it to your students, or display the code in the front of the room as they come into your class that day. If you want to learn more about the different advanced features of using the teacher dashboard and how to create activity codes for classes versus single session code, I would invite you to go to learn.desmos.com so that you can learn more about how to get started with activities or how to even create your own activities. If you have any more questions for me about this session, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm Leigh Nataro, and my email address is leighnataro@gmail.com.
Thanks, Leigh. We appreciate it. We don't want to waste too much time here, but I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Tom Rothery. Tom is multiple time presenter at AP Best Practices. A lot of good ideas from Tom. And as I recall, Tom honed his math skills as a salesman.
Do tell.
Yes, he bought things 1 for a nickel and sold them 2 for a dime. You may ask, how did he make any money? The answer? volume.
Hi, my name is Tom Rothery. I'm from Perry High School in Gilbert, Arizona. The title of my presentation is Redefining Real-World Applications to Accommodate the Needs of Struggling AP Statistics Students. In 2020, due to the pandemic, the world of education got hit by a ton of bricks. Most of the solutions that emerged in the form of professional development, at least in my district, related to technology. And the technology was usually represented as a form of a communication device or as a platform for submitting and checking homework problems. While students are typically strong with all forms of technology, I could tell the consequences of the pandemic took an emotional turn. Whether I was interacting with students through Google Meet or through a Zoom platform, or in class with a bunch of students using masks, a few observations were made. What did I see? First, I noticed incredible sadness. The body disposition of my students was always evident, as their eyes were always looking down and they oftentimes had a slouching posture. Wondering what the next days would bring, what the next weeks would bring, the next months. Would we be in school? Would we not? Was still unknown. The loneliness, as students sat at home, isolated behind a computer, or maybe being unable to express facial expressions through a piece of fabric. And pain. Anytime I seemed to look into a student's eyes, I could find deep sadness within the student. How do I change the dynamics of my classroom to make my students suffer less? Since various forms of technology were thought to be the answer, I reflected back a few decades when such forms of technology didn't exist. What did my teachers do decades ago to capture the interest of students? How did teachers create a positive classroom environment without the use of technology? And when I reflected on those, a certain teacher came in mind. His name was Mr. Lewis, who personally involved students in his math lessons. Rather than using the typical problems from textbooks, curriculum sites, or test problems generators, he used his students and their respective hobbies, interests, and professional goals to create his own lessons, formative assessments, chapter reviews, and/or test assessments. So I decided to do the same with all 116 of my students this 2021-2022 school year. And here's a bit of what you would see. Well, I can start with the football players and the cheerleaders, the basketball star. But equally important is the drum major and the marching band, the badminton players, the a cappella students in my class, and the improv extraordinaire. Again, all 116 students somehow, some way appeared in one of my problems throughout the year for everybody to see and practice. The publishers for either the newspaper or the yearbook, the violinist, the track stars, the dancer, those who may not participate in school activities and work outside of school. The girl who works at a Kids Express so that she can help save money for college. The gym instructor, the hockey players, the student who I had no idea was an artist until I saw one of his works, the pilot, the Disney and Star Wars enthusiasts, superheroes, and it goes on. For the robotics engineer, this future veterinarian, fast food kid, the exhausted Dutch Bros barista, the kid who sneaks chocolate milk into my class every single day. We still made a fun problem for it. And the same girl who always brings iced tea in the 5th hour, we made a fun problem for her. The rock star, the kid who got busted for taking his phone out and ordering online Taco Bell. Yeah, we forgave you and made you a fun problem for you. To the girl who was a lifeguard and got bit by a little kid. And to the Golden State Warriors fan who wore the same Golden State Warriors shirts every single day for the entire school year. Sometimes we just celebrate family, and that needs to be recognized as well. So do students like seeing their names or maybe a name of our friend in the math problems that I give? Sometimes they get happy faces. Other times they get an OMG, and others they get a love it. Some are super ecstatic, and some will give a sincere message based off what I wrote in the problem. This question was about a drum major and her talented musician. And this was actually a comment from one of the musicians, not actually the drum major, who said,
You're killing me, kid. 5 minutes.
This many?
We love it, but 5 minutes. Let's go. Don't make me angry.
Thanks for calling the marching band talented. It really feels good. Hope to see you at some football games this season. So who comments about students being in problems? I shared some examples where the students did. But you'd be surprised at how many parents will comment either at an open house or maybe at a football game, saying that they heard their son or daughter was in a problem and how excited they felt about it. Other teachers and coaches around campus will also take notice, as students who are identified and celebrated through their activities at school are often talked about to their respective coaches. What I've learned from the last 2 years during our pandemic is that while technology can be valuable, it also doesn't equate to being humane. And too many times, the effects of the last 2 years resulted in faces that look like this, sadness in the eyes of this person, or loneliness as we social distance. As a teacher, I found it important that we needed to adjust our way of practice so that we could have more smiles on faces of those students who are doing good things every day that aren't reflected in the classroom. That's really why we entered the profession. While curriculum is important, and we all see that through our practices as teachers, the smiles on our faces are what bring us back each day, one day at a time. Again, my name is Tom Rothery. My email address is attached to this presentation. It's rothery.thomas@cusd80.com. I have a Dropbox that contains hundreds of problems similar to the ones that you saw today about students. If you'd like to look through those and be included in the Dropbox, send me an email. I'll be happy to invite you to be part of the Dropbox file. In the Dropbox, you're invited to look through the problems, cut, copy, paste, do whatever you need to do to help enhance the learning of your own students. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great day, a great summer, and a fantastic upcoming school year.
Appreciate it, Tom. Our next presenter, longtime AP reader, Luke Wilcox. He's fabulous. He is the stats medic, right? So you know stats medic. He's got all kinds of great things to share. Looking forward to it today. Matter of fact, I want to tell you something you may not have known about him. Luke actually likes to collect toenail clippings of famous individuals. Matter of fact, he is Ringo Starr away from having the entire Beatles collection. I don't know if you knew that. Ask him sometime. Here we go.
Hello, stats teachers. My name is Luke Wilcox. I am a math teacher at East Kentwood High School. And in this session, I'd like to consider the question, what messages are we sending to students? And I'm not talking about the words that we use. I'm talking about the decisions and the actions that we take during our classes, thinking more from the student perspective about what messages they're hearing based on those decisions and actions. So we're going to start by going back to my high school math experience back in the 90s. I looked back at my yearbook and I grabbed a couple of photos here. And this is what a typical math classroom looked like for me. Nice, neat, organized rows here where you're not close to the other students that are sitting next to you. So thinking from the student perspective, what are the messages that they're hearing when they walk into this classroom? Well, first, the idea here is that you're not going to be talking to anybody. You are there to sit and to listen. And that math work is done individually. No collaboration is necessary in order to do mathematics. And that efficiency and order are what's important. Now, when it comes to class time, in my typical high school math experience, the teacher would stand at the front of the room. They would have a lecture prepared where they would go through and present some new vocabulary, some definitions, some formulas. They would go through a couple of practice problems where as students, we would take our notes, and then the teacher would ask us to try some problems on our own. So what are the messages that the students hear in this classroom? Well, first, that the teacher is the one that holds the information. Next, that in order to learn, I need to sit there and I need to listen and I need to watch. And then after that, I'm going to imitate those steps on the practice problems and make sure that I know how to do those problems. Next, there were some times during the lecture when the teacher would ask a question. And it was always the same 1 or 2 students that would quickly raise their hand and give the correct answer, get praised by the teacher. Now, what messages are being sent there to students? Well, first, that speed is important. The first student that gets their hand up is going to be the one that's going to be called on. And next, that only some students are good at math. If you're only hearing from the same 2 or 3 students every class period, that is sending the message that there are only some students that are good at math. And then, of course, that having the correct answer is what's important. You're being called on to present the correct answer. And next, when it comes to grading, grading was typically done based on a right or wrong. You receive a grade, a letter grade for that. That letter grade represents your learning. Did you learn it or did you not learn it? And so definitely in my high school math experience, I learned that grades matter the most, that we're definitely looking for correct answers. That's how I'm going to get my good grades. And that it is my job to prove myself anytime I have an assessment. That's where I'm going to show what I know, which definitely led me into a fixed mindset about my own math learning. So now I'm going to present to you what I think is a new way to think about high school math experience and some of the things that I'm trying to do in my own classroom. So starting with just the setup of the classroom, when a student walks into a room that looks like this, there are some different messages now that are being sent. We are now telling the students that they are going to be talking to each other. They are set up in groups of 4. It is expected that students will be talking to each other. And that means that doing mathematics is a collaborative effort. And here, instead of efficiency and order, we now care about process and progress are going to be valued in this classroom. Next, instead of the teacher standing at the front of the room lecturing, the lessons are typically started where the students are doing something together collaboratively. They are experiencing the mathematics. And the messages that sends is that instead of the teacher being the holder of the knowledge, that the students are the ones that are going to be creating the knowledge. That they learn by doing rather than watching, and that they can think and reason in order to solve a problem, rather than imitate some set of steps that the teacher has shown them how to do. Next, I try to create a classroom where all students can add value to what we're doing in class. So I'm always sure to call on different students each day, ask different students to come up to the board to write up their solutions, ask different students to present their strategies and how they arrived at their answers.
Luke, what message are we sending to the readers? 5 minutes, kid. 5 minutes. Don't make me angry.
Now, what messages does that send? Well, that first of all, it's not about speed, that learning takes time, that all students in my classroom can add to the discussion, and that coming up with and sharing strategies is important. It's not just about getting the correct answer, it's about how you arrived at that answer. And then finally, let's do a little bit of rethinking about the way that we do our grading so that it's not just about correct answers, but we care about the process and we care about the effort, where assessments then become an opportunity to learn. So I always tell my students that whatever you get wrong on a quiz or a test is your biggest opportunity to learn something in my class. And this is, of course, going to lead to more of a growth mindset where students are seeing lots of opportunity for growth, for learning based on assessments. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions to think about for next school year. Okay, the first one, how are you going to set up your classroom? What are those desks going to look like? Where is your desk going to be? Where are you going to be standing? Next, what can you do to get your students more involved, more active and collaborative in the learning process? Next, how do you involve more students? How can you get all students to feel like they are adding value? And then finally, thinking about grading, what can you do with some of your grading practices that will help promote a growth mindset for students? So I hope you get a chance over the summer to think about some of these questions, and good luck going into your next school year.
Thanks, Luke. That was great. Next up, we have Adam Chilton. He is our Acorn presenter this year.
We love Acorn.
And I want to say a special thanks to Adam because he created this video for our best practices presentation in only 2 days. 2 days notice.
Good
That's
job,
this
Mike.
many.
A rock star.
Hey folks, Adam Chilton here. I've got a curve that I've been using in AP Stats, and I want to share it with you because I think it's a game changer. It's called Earn Your Curve. So we all struggle when we try to grade in AP Stats rigorously enough and write assessments that are rigorous enough to convey AP level of understanding, but also respect a standard grading scale. What a lot of teachers do is they take an old composite score chart and they say, you know, if you would have earned a 5 by getting a 72%, then I'll give you an A, and they round according to that chart and then kind of give the points away. Well, what if I said I could match that frequency distribution with a curve, but I'm going to make them earn it? Well, it turns out that I can, and it matches really well. Let me show you how it works. So in my class, I give out 2 tests over any set of content. So test 1 is a standard normal test, nothing crazy, just something that you would normally give, and I assess it rigorously. I grade it, no holds barred. We're going to make sure that everything is good. So let's say a kid gets a 70% on the test. Much like on the AP test, you'd be very happy with that, right? Cool. Now, normally if we use that composite score, you'd round it to an A and be done with it. But I'm going to give them another test 2 weeks out that's interchangeable with the first test. Could be an alternate version, right? Not the same questions repeated or anything, numbers change. No. An alternate form, completely new stuff, but over the same content. And what they earn on that test is how much of the curve that they've earned. So this student lost 30 percentage points, and let's say that they got an 80% on the second test. That means I'm going to give them 80% of the points that they lost back. This student will end up getting 24 points on their curve. Now, test 2, by the way, does not go into the grade book for points. I just use it to find the curve, right? And so I'm going to take those 24 points and add it to the original score. So this student gets a 94. Remember, we would have given them about an A with a standard curve using the composite score stuff. Well, this kid just earned an A. Not only that, they took a second test, so they saw twice as many questions and were assessed twice as much on that content. And this time they even earned an 80, so they showed improvement. And it turns out after that first test, students become very interested on the notes that you give them and the feedback that you give them and really filling everything in. And they really, really take that to heart. And it's the only time I've ever seen students be as reflective as they are here. Students usually, we know, toss the test into their book and they're in their folders, and they never pull it back out again until the final, if they ever pull it back out. But these kids start to comb through everything. Let's look at a couple of more examples, though, so we can get underneath our belts what's really going on here. So let's say a kid gets a 60%. We wouldn't normally be super happy with that, right? You'd curve it and you'd be like, they got a 60%. Let's say now they go and take test 2. They get a 90%. Hey, this kid used what we told them and they improved. I really like it. That 90% is great. I'm going to give them 90% of what they lost back. In this case, that ends up being 36 extra percentage points, which will tack onto the original grade. So I get a 96. And you might say, well, hold on, a 96 feels really high. They got a 60 the first time. But remember, test 1 and 2 are interchangeable. So it's like if they would have gotten a 90 on the first one. You would have been great with that. Great, kid. Thank you. Congratulations. We're buds. Well, they just did it on the second time around, so they learn from their mistakes. So I'm good with that A. Now, let's say a kid had a terrible day. They got a 10%, like their baby mama just like left them or something like that. And like, sorry, kid, you're taking the test anyway. They got a 10%. Okay, cool. Come back 2 weeks later and you can make up for that. Let's say the kid does. Let's say they turn it around and they get a 70%. Okay, well, I'll give them 70% of the points that they lost back. So this kid gets 63 percentage points back, turning it overall into a 73. Now, that's not terrible. That's a C. Now, they did take a hit on that first one, right? Because they got a 10%. So I feel like a C is a pretty solid grade in here. Great. Now, let's look at a couple other scenarios. Let's say you have your top-notch kid comes in and gets a 90%. Remember, you're grading this really hard, so it's really hard for them to get 100 anyway. Let's say that they did. They got a 90%. It looks great. Now, I'm happy with that kid, by the way. So let's say they come back in and take test 2, and they get a 50%, which I don't mind because they already showed me that they're already at the peak level almost. So they're still going to earn some points back. This kid's going to earn 5 percentage points back, turn that into a 95. That feels like a fair curve. Now, what usually happens with those kids, by the way, is the kid that gets a 90, they want all the points. So they come back in and they usually give that second test just a hard try, if not a harder try than the first one. And they use their feedback too. And they usually end up getting a little higher score, turning that into a 99 or 100 overall. But now they've also had exposure to twice as many questions and got twice as much feedback as they normally would. Now, let's say we got the other end of the spectrum. We got the kid that got a 65 on it, and he comes in and doesn't do anything on test 2, doesn't show up for it or something like that. It happens. Well, overall, they don't earn any points back, but that doesn't mean that they go down. They stay at 65. So notice.
You're killing me, Smalls. 5 minutes. Don't make me angry. Let's go.
We love our acorns, but they're our standards.
Yeah, don't put me down for that. 5 minutes.
This isn't punitive. They don't decrease overall if they fail one or the other. And that, by the way, means they could also get a 0 on the first test and still earn points back on the second test. Now, let's say that kid, however, learned their lesson. They got their 65, and okay, I'm going to get 100. Well, they get 100% of those points back. So they can take that all the way up to 100%, basically making this a retest. So no matter how bad the first test is, a kid is never sank. There's always hope. They can always still get 100%. So overall, again, what we're doing here is we're taking 2 tests on this. Kids get twice as much exposure. Some people worry about that, by the way. And so they might give 2 tests for 2 chapters or whatever it would be, and just make 1 test out of it and do that twice. That could work for you. I've done it before, and that works too. Again, we try to put some space between the 2 tests, so I give them 2 weeks out. I don't take any time in class to go over anything, though. And that's kind of down there a little bit further. There are no review days, no going over the test days. Yeah, we finish the content on a Tuesday, you're taking a test on a Wednesday, just like they would in college the next day. Now, with that being said, the curve is on that second test. That's where they're earning it all back. And I'm going to grade it hard. And I'm going to feel good about the way that I grade these and not have to compromise. And the students take that feedback and they really do something with it. The biggest thing, though, is the second test is never punitive. And it satisfies requirements if you have things like school or district requirements about retakes. It's a retake. Parents, when they hear this, by the way, are through the roof about how well they like this, and the kid never has an excuse to do poorly, and it's such a good program. All right, if you have questions, my email was in the beginning. Thank you for your time today, and happy grading.
Thanks, Adam. So where can you access all of these amazing best practices?
That is a great question, Bridget.
So 3 ways. You can find them on Bob Lochel's website, mathcoachblog.com.
That's my good friend, Bob. That's my good friend, Bob's. Yeah.
You can also access the Nearpod lesson. It's an at your own pace kind of thing, and search through those videos and go back to them at as much as you want. And that code is NM7UF. You can also just watch this YouTube video as many times as you want. So thanks for watching and joining us. We know that you had options in what you wanted to watch tonight, but you joined us, and we're very thankful for that. We really hope to see you next year in Kansas City.
Wait, you mean I could have been binging Stranger Things all along?
You missed out, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'll see you next year.
See you guys.
Stranger Things.